Good morning. We are reading Fear Street number 7, Haunted by R.L. Stein. I am your host, Ruben Shoup. I am the YA horror author of Vampire Juice. And we are on chapter 16, page 118. So, shall we begin? She stepped back toward the hallway. He stopped in the center of the room. The strong sunlight from the bedroom window seemed to shine right through him. His dark hair, his denim jacket, his jeans were all outlined in gold. "Hey, what's happening?" he asked. Melissa didn't reply. She stood waiting to see if he'd come closer. "Why are you so scared of me all of a sudden?" he asked, looking suspicious. "Don't play dumb," Melissa said, her arms crossed protectively in front of her. "I'm losing control," he said softly. As he spoke, his entire body shimmered and started to fade, making the sunlight from the window seem brighter. "I can't seem to control my strength. I keep fading in and out." "You were solid. Excuse me. You were solid enough in the parking lot," Melissa said angrily. "Huh?" The shimmering slowly stopped, and he stood solidly on the carpet once again. He scratched the side of his jaw. For the first time, Melissa realized he looked frightened. Behind the anger and bitterness, he was just as frightened teenager. "How do you get back here so quickly?" Melissa asked. The sunlight was hurting her eyes, making it hard to see him. She circled around him, keeping her distance, and sat down on the windowsill, her back to the sun. "Get back? What are you talking about? Are you playing some kind of mind game on me? I left you standing outside the parking lot. Now here you are," she said. The sun felt good on her back. He shook his head and started to pace. "You've totally lost it." "You've totally lost it," Melissa told him. "Not me. You're not going to tell me that." "I've been here all morning," he said, sort of drifting in and out. Melissa pushed herself off the windowsill and stood up. "Come on, Paul. You were at the supermarket." He shook his head. "No, it wasn't me. You grabbed my bag and wouldn't give it back." He moved his hand up to her desk lamp. His hand went through the lamp. "I can't grab anything today," he said with real sadness. "I couldn't grab your bag if I wanted to." His whole body seemed to fade, as if the effort of talking was too much for him. "I don't believe you," Melissa said. You're playing some kind of trick." He didn't reply, just stared back at her, trying to read her face, trying to read her thoughts. "What's he doing?" Melissa asked herself. "Is he pretending to be weak? He looks so sad, so frightened now. Is he just trying to throw me off guard for some reason? Just trying to confuse me?" "I suppose it wasn't you last night," she said. He looked surprised. "Last night? When I appeared here last night, you screamed at me like a nut and told me to leave you alone." "No, I meant before that," Melissa said impatiently. "At the dance club." "Dance club?" He snickered. "That wasn't me either." He flowed down to the carpet and seemed to sink into it, his whole body disappearing, then resurfacing on top of it. "Someone who looked like me, maybe." She refused to believe him. "It was you, Paul. It wasn't a look-alike." "You mean you don't remember?" "I remember last night. I went out trying to find my old neighborhood, but I couldn't find it. Couldn't remember where it was. So I came back here." "You're putting me on, right? You were with your buddies." sitting on cars, drinking beers, and when I came out, I don't know their names. Frankie was one of them, and the rest I don't know. Frankie! A smile slowly crossed his face, a smile of recognition. Yeah, Frankie, hey, I remember him. Frankie Mercuso, yeah, he was my neighbor. Great guy. Wow, I'd forgotten all about him. Who else was there? His whole face brightened when I mentioned his friend. Melissa thought, I've been so scared of him. Too scared to realize how lonely and frightened he is. I don't know, Melissa replied, her mind whirling. I don't know your friends. They were creeps. Hey, wait a minute. He flowed to his feet. Don't put my buddies down. Listen, is this some kind of a joke or something? Melissa asked, leaning back against the windowsill. Are you putting me on? No, no joke, he said quietly, looking away from her. Then we have to figure this out, Melissa said, supporting her chin with both hands. Don't you see? You weren't there last night and this morning, but you were here, huh? You were in two places at once, Paul, right? She waited for him to think about it. He looked very confused, pacing rapidly back and forth the length of her bedroom. Yeah, I guess so. I was in two places at once. So what does it mean? Melissa looked down at the floor, thinking hard. The Paul at the dance club and at the parking lot had seemed so different, so much more solid, so much angrier, tougher, so much more alive. Alive. She stared at the ghost floating so lightly, so soundlessly back and forth across the carpet, and she had an idea. Paul, I think I know. He stopped pacing. I think I know, too. He stared at her angry. This is all a trick, isn't it? Some kind of stupid trick to stall for time. No, stop. This isn't it. I should have known, he muttered to himself, turning his back on her. Paul, just listen to me. I think maybe I figured out what's happening. He didn't turn around. He decided to say it anyway. We just assumed you were a ghost from the past, she said. Huh? What do you mean? He asked without turning around. We assumed that you died some time ago. You died in the past. You've come from the past to the present to avenge your death. Yeah, well, of course, he said, obviously confused, not understanding where her thoughts were leading. He turned around and looked at her skeptically, waiting to see what came next. Well, maybe we were wrong, Melissa said, struggling to get her idea straight in her own mind. What if you are a ghost from the future? What? You mean like some stupid science fiction movie or something? No, not that. Just think a minute. What if you haven't died yet? What if you're still alive? As she said it, it all became clearer to Melissa. She knew she was right. She had to be right. I mean, you're a ghost from the future, Paul. You haven't died yet. You've come back in time, back to a time when you're still alive. It doesn't make any sense, he said, scowling. I told you, you've totally lost it. Just think about it, Melissa cried, too excited to get exasperated with him. The Paul I saw at the dance club last night, the Paul with all his buddies, he was still alive. And the Paul who followed me at the supermarket parking lot this morning, that Paul is still alive. Don't you see? You've come back in time from the future. In this time, now, you're still alive, Paul. You're still alive. Without thinking, she ran over to him and happily threw her arms around his shoulders. She felt nothing but cold air. Feeling foolish, she stepped back. He was looking at her, still thinking about what she had said. In other words, he said slowly, you haven't killed me yet. His words sent a chill down her back. She dropped on her knees onto the bed. No, she said quietly. I haven't killed you yet. That's why I have no memory of killing you. I haven't done it. But you're going to. You stared at her accusingly. You're going to. No, she cried. No, don't say that. I won't. I can't promise I won't. I'm dead, he said glumly. I'm dead and trapped in this limbo, and you did it. No, Melissa cried, her voice choked with horror. The thought of killing Paul, of killing anyone, was too terrifying to think about. No, please, listen. Don't you see? This is a second chance, Paul. A second chance for both of us. I won't kill you. I won't just go away. Go away from this house, and stay away if you're not here. There's no way I could kill you. I'm already a ghost, Paul said sadly. It's the live Paul who has to stay away. Of course, don't you see? That's why you've come back, Paul. You didn't come back to Earth to kill me and avenge your death. You came back to Earth to prevent your death. You can do it. You can stop yourself from getting killed. His smile was radiant, mixed with the sunlight streaming into the room, a clean white light so bright Melissa had to shield her eyes with her hand. When she lowered her hand, Paul was standing in front of her. It was his turn to try to hug her. He leaned down, his arms went around her shoulders. Can you feel anything? He asked. Yes, she answered truthfully. It isn't cold. The air is warm now. I can almost feel you, Paul. Still smiling, he stepped back. I'm getting strong again. Thanks, Melissa. I didn't really do anything, she said uncomfortably. She suddenly realized to her surprise that she cared about him and what happened to him. Yeah, you did. You helped figure this all out. You helped me to have a second chance, and I'm not going to blow it. I'm not. I'll help, she said, thinking about how sweet and boyish he was once. You got past the tough exterior, the bitterness in his eyes. I'll take you to him. I'll take you to the live hall tonight. I've got to warn him. You've got to stop him from getting killed. Oh. So what is going to happen? Just thought I'd mention that the full version of this video, I will put on my channel on YouTube. And I'm also the YA horror author of Vampire Juice. It is a mystery adventure with vampires, teen romance, and it's spooky and creepy like Goosebumps and Fear Street. My link is in the bio. Thank you. And my link, I've gotten sidetracked. Oops, sorry. All right, now we're in chapter 17. Paul's house stood in a line of graying, clapboard row houses in a run-down neighborhood west of the old village. A scrawny black cat scratched through the torn plastic garbage bag on the front stoop. A few stoops down the row, two teenage girls in jeans and black leather jackets were having a loud argument, ignoring a neighbor who leaned out a ground floor window, pleading desperately for them to shut up. Melissa parked the car and locked it. She wondered if the car would be okay in this neighborhood. At first, Paul didn't recognize the house. This isn't it, he said. It doesn't look right. Oops, stop. This isn't it, he said. It doesn't look right. But you said Frankie was your neighbor, right? Melissa insisted. Well, I looked up Frankie's address in the phone book. He lives at 36, so you must be 34 or 38. Paul, his face as gray as the evening light, shook his head uncertainly and looked up at the dark, dirty windows of the house. Maybe, he said finally, his voice a whisper. Maybe. The teenage boys, wearing only jeans and t-shirts despite their coolness of the evening, came running at full speed around the corner. Melissa had to leap to the side to get out of their way. They laughed and kept running without turning back. To her surprise, Paul was already halfway up the steps to number 34. This is it, he said. Yes, this is my house. There's my name on the mailbox, Starrett. I can remember it now. All of the sudden, I have all these memories. He didn't seem happy about them, only overwhelmed, filled with sadness, filled with apprehension. I'm going in, he said. Come with me. I can't, she called up to him. He'll see me. He turned and looked down at her from the top of the stoop. You're right. Okay. Wait for me. Wish me luck. He tried to make it sound light, but his wavering voice revealed how worried he was. Good luck, Melissa said, sitting down uncomfortably on the cold granite step. She watched him walk through the front door without opening it. If he succeeds, if he can communicate with the live Paul, he'll go away and I'll never see him again, she thought. To her surprise, she wasn't sure how she felt about that. I wonder. The ghost Paul floated through the living room, dark and empty. The furniture flocked familiar even though a few seconds earlier he had no recognition of any of it. He stopped to rub his hand over his I don't know what that is. Worse corduroy couch. Without realizing it, he cried out. It was as if he was dying all over again, losing everything, losing this house, his friends, losing his memory, everything that mattered to him. I can't go through with this, he thought. It's just too painful. I can't bear it. He heard a noise in the back, the sound of shoes scraping against the floor, a cough. He moved away from the cold old couch and headed toward the back. His bedroom was there. He suddenly remembered. He could picture it so clearly. The long, narrow room, the bunk bed against the wall, the folding chair in front of the low, white counter that served as his desk. The door to his room was open. The light was on. He hesitated a few feet from the doorway. He could feel his energy level surge. Without any further hesitation, he slid silently through the doorway and floated into the narrow room, and saw himself sitting on the lower bunk, illuminated by the shadeless red table lamp on the low counter. There he was. How strange to walk into a room and find yourself. How frightening. How sad. The ghost Paul drifted closer into the center of the narrow room. The live Paul tilted a beer can up to his mouth until it was empty. Then he crushed the can in his hand and tossed it toward the small black wastebasket across the room. He was dressed identically to the ghost, his denim jacket open to reveal a yellow t-shirt underneath. His jeans faded and stained. He ran his hands back through his long black hair and stood up somewhat shakily. The ghost started to call to him, then stopped. Paul had walked to the kitchen and pulled the phone book out from the shelf under the counter. He opened it and began searching for a name, moving his fingers slowly down the columns. Then he picked up the phone, an uncertain look on his face. He pushed a number, referring back to the phone book twice as he pushed it. He leaned his elbow against the counter and waited. Hello, is Melissa there? The ghost moved closer, realizing that Paul was calling Melissa. No, this is just a friend, Paul said, sounding disappointed. My name? It doesn't matter. He hung up the receiver and kicked the counter angrily. It doesn't matter, he repeated bitterly to himself. Paul kicked the counter again, then looking out the window started to button his jacket. He's going out. I'd better materialize now, the ghost thought. He stopped in front of Paul. Don't be afraid. Paul finished buttoning his jacket, turned and headed out the kitchen door. Can you hear me? The ghost called, following behind him. Paul quickly walked back to his room, picked up a hairbrush from the dresser top, and tilted his head to the side, began brushing his hair straight back, staring at himself in the rectangular mirror above the dresser. Turn around, the ghost yelled. You've got to hear me. You've got to. Whistling to himself, Paul tilted his head to the other way and continued to brush his hair. Desperately, the ghost stepped forward and grabbed at the hairbrush, but his hand went right through it. Paul's quick brushstrokes weren't interrupted. Please, turn around. Can't you hear me? There was no answer. Paul didn't see or hear him, or even sense a presence in the room. The ghost concentrated his energy, tried harder to appear. Paul turned off the lamp and headed down the long hall, then out the front door. When he ran into Melissa on the stoop, the ghost wondered. He flowed through the front wall of the house. Paul was already down the steps and jogging toward Davis Street. Melissa was nowhere to be seen. Paul entered Aldo's liquor store on the corner. A minute later, he came out carrying a brown paper bag. Walking jauntily, he headed out to the parking lot. At the side of the store, Hey, Kenny, Frankie, what are you bozos doing here? His buddies, talking under the silver light of a low street lamp in front of the parking lot, interrupted their conversation and came hurrying up to him. You got beer? Frankie asked, grabbing at the brown paper bag. Not for you, Paul told him, swinging the bag out of his reach. Beer makes you drool. So, where's your rich girlfriend, Kenny? A skinny guy with a serious acne problem asked Paul. Paul flashed him a dirty look. Who? That rich girl with all the hair. Frankie and Kenny both burst into a high-pitched laughter and slapped each other a hard high five. You've been giving her what she wants, Kenny asked, leering. Frankie made another unsuccessful grab for the beer. I can have her any time I want, Paul bragged, tapping himself on the chest. His two friends laughed again. Then how come she came to see me? Frankie asked, grinning. This morning, at the supermarket. So that's why she was at the supermarket. Paul glared at Frankie suspiciously. Oh my God. What'd she want? My bod, I guess. Frankie and Kenny exchanged high fives again. Right, Paul said sarcastically. What'd she want? Okay, all right. We have to stop. We're on page 131. I have to go to work. Yeah. All right. So, if you like YA horror, mystery adventures with teen romance, vampires, and then spooky and creepy like Fear Street, my link is in the bio, and it's only for 99 cents this until January 1st. It's on sale just for Christmas. And here's my link. And here's my blurb. Amanda and Sean stumble upon a mysterious can of juice while searching for Halloween costumes at a local store. Despite being kicked out by the sales clerk, they become obsessed with uncovering the truth behind the strange drink. With the help from some local bullies, they sneak back into the store through a crypt in the graveyard, only to find themselves in the midst of a spine-chilling adventure. So until next time, thank you for watching. and have a good day.